Hey guys, so I wanted to do a quick video. It's probably not going to be super quick, but I wanted to do a quick video about my experience with the Canadian Border Patrol this weekend. Um, I was traveling to Canada for a convention, and before we get started, this experience has zero reflection on the convention that I was at. It should have zero reflection on the people involved with the convention or anything to do with the expo. I want to get that out in the open first. This was solely an issue with the Border Patrol and the immigration services there. So earlier last week, I spoke with TSA, and they had told me that I could travel as a female because I explained to them that my ID wouldn't match my face. They told me that as long as all the documentation matched up and everything, then I would be able to travel. So that they were sensitive to the issues, so on and so forth. So I called the Canadian Border Patrol hotline on, I think it was Tuesday, and I spoke with a girl who was super nice, and she was like, "Oh no, our officers are trained in those situations. They understand completely. We understand that people don't gender conform. We understand that people transition, and that um, they don't travel as their born gender. That they would rather travel as their preferred gender or the gender that they're transitioning to. And we understand that sometimes your name in your driver's license picture or your passport picture won't match your face, but we understand that completely. We understand that that some people are like that." So I was so excited because I was able to travel. After talking to this girl, she said I shouldn't have any problem crossing the border, that everything should be great, that as long as all my documentation was there and whatnot, that I would be able to travel and I wouldn't have any incident. So I was so excited. I went through the airport here in St. Louis. No questions asked. Everybody was awesome. Um, Got through the airport in, where was I at? I was in Houston. Left Houston, got into Canada, and um, learned that I had a missing bag, so I was a little upset about that. But I get through, and I'm getting ready to hand the gentleman my passport and my immigration form, and I'm standing at the front of the line, and he kind of gives me a quick up down, and he kind of looks at me, and he kind of smirks, and he kind of motioned for me to come there, and when I approached the podium, he asked me how I was doing, and I responded fine, and I responded in my more male voice, just because I didn't want him to believe that I was trying to deceive him in any way. So he had a very abrupt change in his body language. He was very welcoming at first, and he took a more aggressive stance. He leaned in a little bit. He kind of gave me an odd look. So he looks over my passport. He made a comment. He said, "So, do you have any other type of ID?" And I said, "Yeah, I have my driver's license. I also have a letter from my therapist, and I've got my all of my paperwork from the expo that I'm attending. If you need that." And he was like, "Yeah, I'd like your paperwork from your expo." Okay, great. Didn't ask for my letter from my therapist, stating that who I am and what I'm doing and whatnot. But then continued to ask me, what I was doing in Canada, why I was visiting, how long I was staying, the typical questions. And then towards the end of the conversation, he asked me what electronic devices I had brought into the country with me, and I've never been asked that. So it was kind of a red flag. I didn't quite know why he would even need to know that. So I end up, I answer his questions. He keeps me much longer than most of the other people that were in line. Most of the other people had already passed through, that had gotten there after me. So finally, he lets me through. He gives me my paperwork, and he sends me on my way. I get to the baggage carousel. I pick up my one bag. Find out that my other bag that was missing. Had most of my undergarments and my clothing for the next day, but that's neither here nor there. So I go to fill out the paperwork for that. I'm still a little bit upset because obviously I don't have any clothes for the next day, and I go to exit and hand the gentleman my immigration form to leave, and he hands them both in my immigration form and there was another sheet, the baggage sheet. And he said, okay, so you're going to need to go to this room. An agent is going to help you fill out the rest of your form. And I didn't quite understand what else needed to be filled out. So I go into this room and I stand in this room with one other person who's sitting down on a bench or on a chair rather, over to the side. There's two agents looking at a monitor. There's an X-ray machine. There's a bunch of examination type tables, the silver tables that they have when you're going through security. And then in walks TSA or Border Patrol agent that I had talked to when I came through the first time, when I went through the line, and he calls me over, and I hand him all my documentation, and he's like, so the reason why you're here is because I don't believe that the person on this passport is you. I'm not convinced that they're you. And instead of telling me that they needed to ask me some secondary questions just to basically to make sure that I am who I say I am, when I was exiting, they lied to me. Whenever I walked through, they sent me through the door, obviously unprepared for what they were going to do. But they end up, the gentleman, tells me that, he's not convinced. So he's going to ask me some questions. He's going to go through my stuff. He's going to do this. He's going to do that. So that they can decide whether or not I am who I am. And so they can decide if I'm, a felon or someone that's planning to commit a crime that's trying to enter the country. And I 100% get that. But I told the gentleman, I said, I can take off my makeup. If you need me to take off my makeup, I can totally take off my makeup. I'm trying to help speed this process up because I've already had a super long day. It's already 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. And I want to get to my hotel. I want to take a shower. I want to get some food. I want to see my friends, and I want to go to sleep. I already have a missing bag. I've got to figure out what to do with that. I want to move on and get into the country because I'm just done. I'm offering to take off my makeup. So he gets extremely defensive, and he's like, no, you need to calm down. I might have been a little worked up, but I was not in any way being aggressive or anything else. And that's basically how this entire conversation with this gentleman went. He was very, very offensive. He refused to even consider addressing me by the pronouns that I prefer. Instead of ma'am, it was Mr. He called me by my birth name. He did not bother to ask through most of the conversation if I had anything, if I had a preferred pronoun, a preferred name. So he has me empty my pockets. I'm not allowed to have my cell phone. I'm not allowed to have any type of identification, no money in my pockets, nothing. And didn't explain to me why still that I needed all of this stuff out on the on the counter, except that he needed to verify who I was. So I sit down, he's doing some stuff on the computer, and then he asks me what social media accounts I have. And I tell him, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, I have everything. I'm a person, of course I have a ton of stuff. So he asks me what the accounts are called. I give it to him. He starts going through them, and he starts looking at all my pictures and whatnot. And then he asks me if I have, or why I don't have any pictures of myself pre-operation, because I don't think he's even remotely trained in being sensitive to a trans person at all, because he doesn't understand anything. He doesn't know what verbiage to use, nothing. So I told him, I said, I've had no operations, first and foremost, but I don't think you quite understand. Trans people don't particularly care for reliving their past and reliving the person that they were. So there are very few pictures of my old self on my Facebook page. I said there's one. There's literally one picture of me side by side with what I look like now. So, you guys, I'm sorry. This is going to be a long video. So this whole process is taking forever. We're probably 45 minutes into it. He's still looking through all my social media, and he calls me back over, and we're talking about. He's asking me just a series of questions. There were questions about what the convention, what I do for a living. He wanted to know how much money I made. He wanted to know. And I told him, I said, the convention brings me up as a guest. They pay for everything. They take care of, everything. And, I'm not financially responsible for any of my trip. And, I try to explain that to him because I know that, they can ask you to prove that you have enough money in your bank account to support a trip to Canada. There's a lot of different things that they can ask. But, I tell him, there's no financial responsibility for me on this trip. He asks me, about my business and about what my significant other does for a living and how much they make per year. And there's just a lot of different questions that I kind of felt weren't pertinent to me proving who I was. Excuse me, all the while, still, the easiest way to do this would have been when I offered to take off my makeup. I would have been able to be like, oh, hey, look, I kind of look like that person in the photo, but hormones, and I'm not chubby as much anymore, and, hormones. So he's still being a little aggressive with me. He still has a pretty accusing tone. So he tells me to go back and sit down. He scrolls through my Facebook page some more, and he leaves. I don't know if he's called out into the hallway or if he goes out into the hallway or what, but he's gone for a few minutes. I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, okay, this is kind of getting ridiculous because we could have had this taken care of in the first 5 minutes. So he comes back in and he calls me up again, again by my my legal name. Still hasn't bothered to even attempt to address the correct pronouns. And he finally, I heard him speaking out in the hallway, but he finally says, so, what sex do you identify with? What restroom do you use whenever you use the restroom? What's your preferred name? What are your preferred pronouns? And it was literally a 180-degree turn. I don't know if he was yelled at. I don't know what the problem was, but he ended up, he had a 180-degree change in his attitude. So then finally, he said, okay, I'm mostly convinced because I found the picture of you side by side with your, with on your Facebook page with what you look like now and what you look like then. I was like, great, thank you, because let's be real honest, this is getting a little ridiculous, saying to myself in my head. So he said, we've still got some other stuff that we've got to do, and he tells me that we're going to go through my entire set of bags just to make sure that there's nothing in there that doesn't need to be in there. And it's a little frustrating because they emailed the gentleman who was sitting, or they scanned the gentleman who was sitting next to me, who was sitting in the room previously. They scanned his items. They didn't bother to dump everything out on the counter like what they did with mine. Literally everything that I had was out on their counters at some point. So I had to repack all of my bags. He thumbed through everything that I had, my makeup, asked me if all of the prescription medication in my bag was mine, wanted to know if I had any controlled substances, wanted to know if I had Oxycontin, things like that, on me. And I told him, no, all of my stuff is prescription. I almost wanted to tell him, feel free to dump out everything, but I have a feeling that they would have. But all the while, everything that he said to me was very accusatory. very assuming that I was trying to break the law in some sort of way. The entire time I have felt like I am guilty and I have to prove my innocence. Not that they just want to make sure that I am who I say I am. There was at no point in time did it feel like that. It felt like I was being singled out because I don't present a certain way. And then finally, we get everything repacked, and oh my gosh, I have horrible bags. I'm so tired, you guys. So we get to the end, and probably the worst thing that anyone has ever said to me. He said, so I've noticed from your Facebook page and your Instagram pages that you like anime. And I said, I don't like anime. And it didn't occur to me that a lot of people think that anime is literally everything that is not a live action movie. And I get that because by definition it could be. So I said, I like video games. I like, pop culture stuff. So I guess so. And he says to me, well, we find that that a lot of times, most of the time, whenever someone likes anime and posts a lot of anime on their page, and they have very oh, what did he say? It was something to the effect of, they're very public about their like for anime, that they also are a fan of child pornography. What? How dare you? One, how dare you associate people that like pop culture, comic books, whatever, with child pornography, and how dare you accuse me of that? You've obviously seen nothing that would even come close to indicating that, except for your stereotype. A stereotype that you may or may not have made up. What, because you have a generalized assumption about perverts that trans people now are perverts too, and that they like child porn, or because I like cartoons, I like child porn? Then he tries to tell me if I have a picture, even if I have a picture of Bart Simpson on my phone, because Bart Simpson is a child, that is considered child pornography, and that he has every right to go through all of my electronic devices and all of my media. I'm sorry, first and foremost, you don't have the right to go through my media if it's a private media. Second, how dare you? I don't give a damn if you go through my phone, because you're not going to find anything except, let's be real honest, pictures of me topless. Don't get any ideas. Pictures of me topless. A picture of one of my friends who I've sent our pictures off to my plastic surgeon and said, this is what I want. You're going to find, some really funny adult-themed artwork, but there's no nudity, there's no anything else. I said, but go ahead and go through my phone. Feel free. So after about 20 minutes, now mind you, it's about 10:15, 10:30. I walked in there 9:15-ish. It's late. I'm exhausted. So after a while, he calls me over and he said, okay, I'm pretty much convinced, so we're going to go ahead and get you on your way. He said something else, and I can't remember what it was, but at the very end, he looks right at me, and with a smirk on his face, he says, have a great trip to Canada. You guys, I have never been treated so poorly by an officer. I have never been treated so poorly by someone who is supposed to have training to understand the ins and the outs of the trans community and be sensitive to what we go through. What I experienced with the Canadian Border Patrol in Edmonton was unacceptable. This is not the first time that someone that is a little different has attempted to enter Canada and has entered Canada and has been singled out. I have people that have, I've got friends that have been accused of being porn stars or escorts. I have friends that have been held for a long time and questioned, and have been told that they need to make themselves look like men again, because they don't believe that they are who they say they are. So I understand completely. My experience was appalling. The agent was rude. He was combative. He did not attempt to even let me prove to him quickly, because I could have. He was singling me out and keeping me there as long as he could, full well knowing that I offered a solution. Let's be honest, if I'm offering the solution, I'm who I say I am, because I'm not going to put myself in that kind of situation if I'm not. So, again, this experience literally has nothing to do with the expo that I attended. The people of Edmonton has nothing to do with them. It has to do with the insensitivity of one agent, or possibly an agency. I don't know. I don't know how many times this happens. I don't know how many times that this person singles out people that he may or may not agree with to go through secondary screening. But if they would have just said, we have some secondary questions for you that we need you to answer, instead of lying to me, I would have been much more comfortable. I would have felt much less accused of doing something wrong, especially whenever I was told by the person at the Border Patrol office, whom he questioned me about. He wanted to know who I spoke to, what day I spoke to them, what time I spoke to them, what office I called. And I told him, I said, I don't remember their name. I do know that it was 5 minutes until 4, and I called the Manitoba office. So, you know, that should help a little. You might be able to find out who was working that day and who they spoke to. But I just felt very singled out. And I wanted to get this out there because I thought about it and had this experience happen to one of my brothers or sisters that are traveling. I don't know if it would have turned out the same way, because I know a lot of my trans family is they're a little bit hotter headed than I am. So I wanted to get this out there because there needs to be some sort of change. It's hard enough to get your name changed and get your driver's license changed and your passport changed for multiple reasons. And when we are told that we are able to travel as the people we are, and then singled out for it and made to prove we are who we are, it's a little counterproductive. You either need to make it easier for me to get access to the name changes and everything else, or you need to make it easier for me to be able to travel, and someone needs to have training on how to handle those situations, because this is unacceptable. This is not something that makes me want to travel back to that area. I will, because I love the Edmonton area and everybody was awesome. But it's definitely something that is out of character for the Canadian people, especially the Canadian people. So, with that being said, I'm going to sign off. You guys, please share this, because people need to understand that this happens. People need to understand that that there are people that will single us out regardless. And I would love for the Canadian Border Patrol to be able to have some visibility to what happened. And you guys, just so you know, there's already things in place that are working, that that we're doing to make sure that this is dealt with. But I definitely want this video out there. I want people to know that even looking like a female, I mean, I know I do. I'm not saying that I don't. Today I look like crap because I've slept all day and I traveled for literally 14 hours overnight. So I'm exhausted, but I still know that I don't, that I can pass, that that people understand that. So I feel awful for my family that doesn't, for my family that has a little bit of trouble. So please get it out there for their sake, for everyone's sake, so that we can start enacting some change to make it easier for us to be ourselves. So guys, thank you for watching my 24-minute rant. Thank you so much. I hope that you learned a little bit at least. I will talk to you guys soon. Thank you.